New patch, new changes, and it's time for our first look at WildRift patch 4.1a. My name is Kirks, and welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video. Before we hop into the video discussing the new patch notes, let's talk about our question of the day. Do you believe AD carry is weak in solo queue or just generally in legendary queue? Let me know in the comments below. First, let's talk about champion buffs. On the first spot we have Mr. Jhin. A buff to his second ability, Deadly Flourish. The cooldown's going on from 14 seconds to 12 seconds. There's still a bug in the game, considering Lord Dominic's regards and Jhin and their interaction, and it's still not fixed to my knowledge. So, we are seeing some buffs when there is a very big item for Jhin that hasn't been fixed yet. Kinda confusing to me at least. Is this buff going to do anything with Jhin and his strength in solo queue? Not necessarily. Jhin as a champion hasn't been performing too well outside of mediocre skill levels. It's very difficult nowadays to make proper statements about skill levels, because a Jhin 1 trick will always perform on this champion, given that he's playing against Grandmaster rank 30,000. Rarely you'll be matched up against champions that will brutally punish you, so if you are a one trick on a champion, you'll still make a champion work, same for like Gorilla and so on other things. But if you view this in a context of players on equal skill level, Jhin is a little bit of a lackluster. The next champion on this buff list is Nunu and Willem. His base health is going up from 105 to 112 per level, and the consume heal bonus of his first ability ratio is also going up from 8 to 9% with the bonus health. What does this do to Nunu? Nunu is a supportive jungler that has very interesting item choices into off-tank and full AP if you truly want so. The tank version of the Nunu build is very dependent on his teammates to perform well, because objectives are the things that they want to take the most. And if a Nunu is unable to do so, the only thing he can realistically be is a meat shield or somebody that's engages for his team. Outside of this, Nunu doesn't provide too much apart from being obnoxious to deal with the snowball ganking potential. Is this going to make Nunu more meta? No, yet again, a one trick or people that generally like Nunu will be very happy about those changes, but it's not going to be a drastic change in the meta simply due to those little adjustments. Another adjustment comes for Warwick, which we have called for in the last one as well. Like, the changes to Warwick in the last patch were not enough to make him strong enough to not be on the buff radar again, and here it's a similar thing again. So his first ability's damage converted to heal ratio goes up in the early game, from 22.5% to 37.5%. That is quite the adjustment and quite the increase, but the issue is, it will still not make this champion too strong. And realistically speaking, from my perspective, the only way Warwick is going to be played and piloted in this game is a pure side laner. Just going into the side lane with Divine Sundra, Hullbreaker and Emerald Twin God and just run it down on the side lane, taking down towers. In teamfights, he doesn't provide too much apart from being a meat wall, and yeah. So I'd be very much surprised if we are not going to see more changes to Warwick soon after this. Now it's time for the nerfs. First we have Amumu's second ability, Despair's ability power ratio. It's going down from 0.75% to 0.6%. This incentivizes the Syrian Crown start over the Leandri start, and just generally tells you, well, you're more designed to be a tank, and given the fact that you have just gotten another tank item, which also has burn damage, there's something that needs to be adjusted. Naturally speaking, adjusting Syrian Crown instantly if there's only a few select users seems a little bit silly, so rather adjust a champion that might be a little bit problematic with this item. And here we have Amumu. This change is not going to do too much against him. It's quite a significant nerf in terms of percentage damage, but it will not make him that terrible of a champion. Usually I would say Amumu is a champion that if you're, for example, autofilled in jungle role or playing very interesting duo queue combinations or just want to fight every objective, Amumu is not the worst pick. Amumu loves teamfights, and therefore this champion has such a high success rate because people go for teamfights all the time, even though it's not even remotely to the best choice they're presented with. For our next champion's change, Nautilus, his Riptide damage is going to be reduced to monsters from 200% bonus modifier to 175%. And let me tell you this is very much okay. It's very much required because Nautilus has been receiving so many buffs for the jungle role, literally shifting his identity to becoming a primary jungler, simply due to the fact that his jungle clear is obnoxiously fast and his damage potential and reliability is beyond crazy. This champion deserves this nerf, and it's very good that it happens, but yet again, it will not push him out of the meta or anything, it will just make him slightly weaker. The next change is for Varus, and it's a nerf. His Change of Corruption's ability power ratio goes down from 100% to 85%. This is something which is very confusing. Varus has been struggling quite a lot in the past in solo queue, even though this champion has always been okay. It's simply due to people playing him wrong or just solo queue being a relatively weird place. But there's just one patch in which his ability power ratios got buffed to this extent, with the base damage as well, and they're immediately nerfing it, which shows that apparently there was a fundamental misunderstanding on how to pilot normal Varus, but AP Varus was just fine. So it's just kind of interesting to see. Yet again, this nerf is perfectly fine. It's not going to change too much for him, because this champion overkilled you by quite a large margin. So even though it looks like a hefty nerf, he is still going to kill you. And that's quite literally it. And Varus will still be good in the spots where Varus is or was good previously, just slightly weaker as before. So no meta defining or meta changing. The next nerf comes for Zeri. The base health is going down from 120 to 112, and her ultimate's basic attack chain bonus damage is going down from 25% bonus ratio to only 20% of the attack damage. What does this do to Zeri? Zeri as a champion standalone isn't the greatest. Zeri usually wants an enchanter alongside her, something like a Lulu, something like a Yuumi, something that appeals for her and enables her and empowers her at the same time. So what we're doing here is very problematic. I myself would be very curious to see if there's like statistics, but obviously we don't have access to the API, so it's not possible, how Zeri's win rate differs from having an enchanter support to having an engaged support, and how much of this win rate and problem is linked to Zeri having a Lulu or a Yuumi. From personal experience, I can almost always say that if I've seen a Zeri on either team, it was primarily with a Lulu or a Yuumi, which is a very interesting thing because no other AD carry to this day, apart from maybe Tristana, has seen so many Lulus and Yuumis alongside her than this champion. But it's just isolated experience, which is obviously not conclusive, but I'd really love to see the data. What it does for the champion, it doesn't do too much about it. Makes it slightly weaker. It's still gonna be good and strong with a support player, but if anything, I believe they should nerf the first ability because it's too obnoxious to deal with. With nerfs out of the way, we go over to the real adjustments, and here we have Pyke. His first ability's damage ratio to minions goes down from 100% to 80%. The bonus damage to monsters from 110 to 90%. His third ability's bonus damage to monsters from 110 to 100%, and the death below gold ratio for solo kills goes down from 110 to 100%, whereas the gold granted for assisting a teammate goes up from 110 to 120, and when the teammate kills the target within ultimate range, Pyke gains extra gold from 110% to 120%. So this is gonna be quite easy. Pyke has been too troublesome when it comes to rotations. He cleared the waves too fast and therefore was allowed to just run around the map and wreak havoc. So the real question with those changes is it a threshold nerf? What is a threshold nerf? Let's say Pyke uses his third ability and his first ability into the wave and then only needs to input one auto attack to kill the remainder of the wave. Now with those changes, what might be happening is that Pyke needs to input 2 attacks to clear the wave, which is a big difference because those threshold nerfs can really change the pace of a game. And in the previous times where he might be able to just go away and enjoy the parts of the other parts of the map while killing enemies on cooldown, he'll be more likely to be tied down to a lane or his jungle in direct comparison. Obviously, we have to wait and see how much it actually does, but it just tries to remove his running around and killing people type of gameplay. Our next change comes for Rammus, and it's an adjustment again. The defensive bolt's base damage goes up from 8 to 10, so it's a +2 on like basically every level, or just generally +2 adjustment. And the percentage armor boost goes down in direct comparison from 70% to 100% to then later on only to 85%. However though, now since you always remember that if Rammus uses second ability slowed down massively, that is going to be removed now. Because Rammus' second ability, the defensive ball curl, no longer reduces the movement speed by 30% when activated. This is a relatively huge change, especially if you think about Searing Crown and Sunfire and all those items, because Rammus is now able to stick to people. In the past, Rammus was only really able to do something while slowing people down with his ultimate or taunting somebody, and then he would just fall behind because people would just simply run away from him. Now with this in mind, it's not going to be that easy anymore, which could actually promote a shift in the meta or the perception on Rammus as a power pick. We'll see about this. Some of the big changes that I really like in this patch is a change to the Mantle of the 12th Hour. In the past we said that an armor and resistances item, which is directly competing with STERAK'S Gauge and Twin Guard, surely has no place in being picked up. And Riot identified this as being correct, and now the item provides health, 200 health, the armor goes down from 50 to 40, and the magic resistance also goes down from 50 to 40. Some people may advocate that this is a nerf to the item, but it's actually quite a big buff to the item. Now granting health and just adding more adding resistances in general is really beneficial, but making it more efficient with bonus health makes it way easier. So champions such as Cyan could really look into this item. The only issue I still have with this item is that it's a lifeline item, which makes it directly compete with STERAK'S Gauge. And let's say you're a bruiser, you want STERAK'S Gauge over this item, because you'll go for Twin Guard, and if you don't have STERAK'S Gauge in direct comparison, you'll be way squishier, even though you have more resistances, but you don't have enough health. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but long story short, if you have a lot of HP, you want at least a few resistances, and if you don't have a lot of HP, resistances will mean less. That's basically the rundown. It's a good change, but it will only affect a few champions. So for the future, I'd really like to see a change to the lifeline passive and make it a little bit more different. The last change of this patch is STERAK'S Gauge being accessible for ranged champions, and this is a big problem. So previously Urgot never had an item that was good for him, like really good for him, and now he has an item that is powerful. And we might see new items or changes to systems in the future again, especially with the AD carry patch in 4.2, which was teased a long time ago, that will give him even more access to different items. But even though this is probably targeted towards Urgot, it makes something really gives birth to something really troublesome. You have seen that in Europe, like here, we have kind of established a weird item culture when it comes to tanky or bruiser AD carries. I've talked with Doom, and he basically popularized an interesting idea about item builds on Corki and Vayne, and we are basically just refining those, and now with STERAK'S Gauge being an item, this becomes even more troublesome. So for example, the Vayne build has a Varmox in it and a Trinity Force. And now this champion might also have access to STERAK'S Gauge, which would give even more power to the health, because STERAK'S Gauge scales off bonus health. And then you also have Corki, which doesn't really need a set 5th item. Because since you already have Riftmaker, which scales off pre-mitigation damage, you don't really need the Void stuff. It's interesting, and giving more AD to your spells is also more powerful than AP in direct comparison due to the scalings. So if you keep that in mind, those champions become indefinitely tankier, or infinitely more tankier, and also deal more damage. Which might put a PC meta into effect that was one of the most toxic metas in the game. A tanky bruiser meta on AD carries. Because AD carries effectively turn into ranged bruisers, and you can't kill them and they'll just kill you. I really hope this doesn't happen, and it's going to be a dark night if it happens, but let's see what gets at us in the future. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more. See you soon.